Welcome to Nurses Out Loud. Today, we are going to dive into some of the most important policy changes that could reshape healthcare, medicine, and public health in America. Recently, I gathered feedback from an incredible group of people, my Facebook followers, and I asked them to share their ideas and concerns about what needs to change in our system. What I got back was awesome. It was from the rights of the individuals to make informed choices about vaccines to the pressing need for a more holistic and transparent approach to healthcare. These voices were certainly calling for reform. So, in this episode, we're going to explore everything from eliminating mandatory vaccine schedules, holding Big Pharma accountable, and ensuring insurance companies prioritize patient care over profits, to advocating for better access to alternative treatments like chiropractic care and naturopathy. What's clear is that Americans want a system that puts health and safety first, not corporate interests. In the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, it's more important than ever that we stay informed and hold our government accountable for the decisions that they make on our behalf with our money. So, joining me today, hopefully Nurse Michele will be able to join. She's having some technical difficulties, but I do have with me Nurse Nicole, who is an avid advocate for policy changes. So I'm so excited that she could be here today. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you so much. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I was really shocked at how many people responded. I got hundreds of comments and likes to the post about what would you do to change healthcare in America, and it was really nice that people were engaging so much.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that I hope in the future that we can continue to build the momentum on is getting real-time feedback from individuals that are every day, just like you and I, who have been through some pretty hard times when it comes to healthcare or lack thereof and what it looks like so that hopefully this new administration will be able to buy in what the people have gone through and see if we could have reform.
Right, exactly. Are you when did you get into this space?
So it was probably more towards like it was more recent, 2022. It wasn't something that
Yep.
I was involved in just because I spend more time with my patients and investing where I was working. It never really was a need for me to dive in at this level. I knew about it, but when the pandemic hit and we started to see more rights being taken away and how healthcare was being driven and essentially again more profits over patient, it was really something that stood out that needed to be discussed, but also be discussed from someone who's in the healthcare system, who is actually working at the bedside. I think it is a different approach and also has a lot of insight when you utilize someone who is essentially boots on the ground in that manner, in addition to everyone else that comes forward and has ideas and different things that they want to contribute to make better policies come to fruition. However, sometimes it's a little bit easier to be in the know because you're right there seeing it in real time and what that looks like for so many people across multiple communities. And so yeah, it was probably in 2022 when I started to be a little bit more vocal, put myself out there, show up to those county commissioner meetings, making sure I was attending town hall meetings and understanding first and foremost what exactly was going on. And at that level, because again, we can hear things, we can see things posted on social media, but until you're actually doing it and you're face to face with these individuals, you want to make sure that you have as much of that correct and accurate information before you can actually formulate a game plan on how to move forward.
Right, exactly. It's understanding how the process works and where your voice will be best suited. And so, yes, when they have open, public comments, it's important, especially for nurses, right? And we are required really to educate ourselves. This is a lot ongoing process in our life. It's under our ethical principles uh, that we will continue to educate ourselves. So when you have something that's as polarizing as COVID-19, it's really important to find out, hey, what is it that this side is screaming about? And why is this side screaming about this? You have to look at both sides, because as a nurse, when we take care of our patients, it's important for us to have an understanding and a knowledge of what is happening out there culturally, right? Especially for something like COVID-19, where it affected everyone, but it affected everyone on different levels and for different reasons.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I think people may not realize when it comes to nurses. When you ask them, how would you describe a nurse? What kind of attributes or different things that would make you identify what a nurse is? A lot of times they will say an educator, someone that may advocate. But again, we have to know and be neutral, in my opinion, because when we come out and we educate and we advocate, we need to be able to speak on these subjects that could affect the majority, because everyone is not going to fit the mold, and it's not going to be a one size fits all. Just like medicine is not a one size fits all. It is something that needs to be tailored. So when you're approaching these situations and you're trying to educate on a larger scale, it's just something that I think most individuals don't realize, and if they ask you your opinion, that's one thing. But when we come to it, it's like informed consent. You need to be able to discuss with the good, with the bad, and just kind of blanket know what we're talking about, but then be able to explain to them, well, if we go this way, this could potentially happen. If we go this way, this could happen, so that they have the information on both sides and they're able to make that educated, decision making amongst the team. So I see it almost the same way in that aspect.
Yes. And I see that Nurse Michele has joined us. Hello. I'm happy that you're here. Yeah. So, Michele, I was talking about, I haven't actually introduced this. So, I had my first phone call with the MAHA transition team, the Make America Healthy Again transition team, Robert F. Kennedy's team. And I submitted my package to them, my CV, cover letter, and then they reached out to me for our initial conversation. And I was so excited. I posted it on Facebook and asked everyone, what policies would you like to see changed? And I received a ton of feedback. And so what I have been hearing, and I'd like for you to weigh in on this, Michele, is that we have some little Nancy naysayers out there and who have commented how scared they are that someone like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is an attorney and not a medical professional and not a politician, assume a role as big as Secretary of HHS. And for those of you, I want you to understand how big this role is, because he will oversee the director of the NIH, the CDC, and the FDA. So this is a huge job and a huge responsibility. What would you say, Michele, to those people who don't agree that he is qualified to be in a position like that?
Well, I would suspect that the majority of medical professionals out there didn't have a clue that HHS is the one that you're suing if you ever have a vaccine injured child. So number one, I bet all you medical professionals who are naysayers didn't know that fact. Okay, so why does that matter? Well, it looks like billions of American children are being, injected at all times over the last how many decades that vaccinations have been going on. So if you want to go with the theory, if you don't even believe in vaccine injury, let's just go with the theory that you do believe that a vaccine is a pharmaceutical product, which by the way, it is. So it is a pharmaceutical product. So we already know for medical professionals that all pharmaceutical products can have an injury potential. And if they have injury potential, and we already know, because if you didn't know, they've already paid out nearly $5 billion to injured, permanently handicapped, and dead children. And we do already know that HHS themselves, when they had all the medical professionals running the place, hired Harvard to do a study to find out just how efficient their vaccine adverse event reporting system was. And they've discovered that it was only collecting 1% of the actual injuries. So their present medical professionals are failing at collecting a proper percentage of actual injuries. And they've already paid out $5 billion to injured, permanently handicapped, and dead children. And all of American children, technically have to have all these vaccines before they go to school. So if you have children, if you give a crap about children, if you care anything about the future of our country whatsoever, perhaps a man who has been involved with HHS in the litigation process in this thing called the Federal Vaccine Court that the majority of American professionals also don't know exists, but he's been fighting it. And he knows exactly how very difficult it is. Maybe you don't know that Nurse Michelle's been in the Federal Vaccine Court for 8 years fighting for justice for my own child. And one of the largest winners of the country is Dr. Andrew Poling, his daughter, who won like $10 million. He said to me, it'll take 10 years to lose. The average people take 10 years to lose in this lack of justice tort system that's been created that gives you no ability to sue a vaccine maker for their injury, where here we have RFK Jr., who's leading the cause, has an entire site dedicated to educating the public about the dangers, the harms, everything that's already being done because of vaccines that have already contributed to harms to the American people's children. So as you think it's nothing whatsoever that your kid needs to have allergy shots to get by life, if you think nothing about, oh, my kid just happens to be the first person in our entire family who ever had asthma, if your kid has eczema and nobody else has ever had eczema, if you have any kind of bowel disorders or other kind of GI or any kind of health issues going on with your child, let's just postulate that there's a possibility that it's because of vaccines. So if he doesn't do anything but fix the vaccine program and expose the truth about how many American children are actually harmed, compare and contrast the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated, he's done the American people a great service just by doing that.
Yeah, 100%. And I tell people too, I say, well, first of all, guys, he is an attorney who has litigated these matters. People would be shocked when I was in court with HHS over all the different rabbit holes that I went down, right? Suing them for danger to public health, public safety, waste, fraud, and abuse, abuse of authority, these, overarching themes. My attorney had to know all of the facts of the case in order to argue it. So anyone who says, oh, he's just an attorney, he doesn't know, you're sadly mistaking. They have to understand in order to be a good litigator, right? What do you think about that, Nicole?
I just want to say, is Bill Gates a doctor or
Bravo?
I would really just say, if we're going to just throw stones here, that Bill Gates is neither. And for him to be all up in the mix and just taking all of his poison and toxins and like tragic, methods everywhere, that, anything would be better. And obviously, like you mentioned, RFK has a huge history, long-standing history in the legal field. And sometimes that could be 10 times better than anything that you can imagine sometimes in the medical field, because what we've seen consistently are the dangers. And he would speak to that. He would be able to highlight that. And I just think it's just the other side having their tactic of trying to come in and discredit and, just downplay all the things. So, I don't expect anything less that would be their avenue to try to take it that way. But just like Nurse Michele said, there are so many things that he could do on his own level of expertise that could just bring the house down, that there would be no downside to that. That would be amazing for the American people.
Yeah.
Not to mention, this is the man that exposed Monsanto. For goodness sakes, we're talking about a man who exposed the poison of the American food. He Roundup. How many people have used Roundup in your yard? I just bought a house 3 years ago, and I said, I don't know how much Roundup they used on this property before I got here, but it's never being. It's not going to be on my property.
Yeah.
Because why? Because of somebody like RFK getting justice to make sure that when you go fishing and you catch a fish and you feel so good that you caught something out of a local lake, it's not poison.
Right.
There you go. Exactly. People do not understand how important this is. And the fact that you don't have a politician. I mean, guys, do we not understand when we have Senator Mitch McConnell who doesn't, who's like so neurodegenerated, walking around shaking, needing people to hold on to him on both sides, and he is leading our country. This is horrific.
We need a sharp intellectual bulldog that actually knows what he's doing.
Yes.
Who's already fought the battle. He knows about the powers that be that are passing the kind of things that said it was safe to put Roundup in your backyard. Somebody said it was safe to put Roundup in your backyard, and the poison entered our population because of those people, and because of somebody that's protecting you.
Yeah.
Now we know who Monsanto really is.
That's right. And we also know who the real Anthony Fauci is. This is Robert F. Kennedy's book that came out, I believe it was in 2021. After I blew the whistle, I had this and I was like, oh my goodness. And guys, there's 297 footnote citations in here. Okay. To be able to look up what he says and have documentation behind it that would further your research is just so important. We can't be looking at headlines and reading the abstract of a study anymore, because we know that the NIH funds these studies. Big Pharma gives money to NIH. Okay. They give money to for their research. That's why it's very important to look and see if the study's authors have any what's the
conflict of interest?
Conflict of interest. Yeah, conflict of interest, because they can design these studies and present things in such a way to prove their hypothesis the way they want to, right? So it's important that we do have honorable people with integrity that's leading our research foundation. And the FDA. The FDA is the one who gives out the emergency use authorizations, okay, for experimental investigational biologics, like Michele said. We have to make sure that these people have integrity and they're not getting money from Big Pharma.
Think how many people in America have reflux, just simple reflux. You're out there listening, you have simple reflux. The FDA said ranitidine was completely safe, and it actually was quite effective for reflux. I know for a fact because I took it for 10 years, but apparently it causes cancer. Now, why did I take it? Because I didn't want throat cancer from esophageal reflux from having reflux. So I took something to prevent cancer that causes cancer. So we have a problem, Houston. We need somebody who is going to get in there and say, who is passing that these drugs are okay? Who's involved in getting some money here? Let's get rid of all conflict of interest and only get the safest, best medications to all of us. Don't we all want that?
Right. And we want informed consent, and we want to know that there are studies that are being done. Just like our childhood immunization schedules. It's like we all thought that there's placebo-controlled trials with all of them, and they're not. It's just not being done. So, before we continue on with our commentary, I do want to add in some of these titles. So we are going to discuss by the end of the show, and I'm going to make sure of it, okay, is vaccine policy and health autonomy, accountability and liability in healthcare, alternative medicine and holistic health, financial transparency and corruption, public awareness and access to information, addressing the COVID-19 aftermath, health insurance reform, and environmental and lifestyle factors. Okay, so let's start off with vaccine policy and health autonomy. We had people that said no mandatory vaccine schedules for school, work, or participation in society. True informed consent with full disclosure of vaccine ingredients, risk, and side effects, and reduce or eliminate the CDC recommended vaccine schedule. Michele, you want to take this? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I have heard it said by very respected physicians and RFK Jr., who I know is not a physician, but is very well informed. The system, the whole program has to be shut down until there is clear accountability and these studies are done. And supposedly these studies take decades. So, 5 years, 10 years. So we are looking at somebody having to come up with solutions that support the immune system for our children that let's just say somebody actually proves how frequently have we actually had measles. Peter Hotez just said, oh gosh, we have some measles in the septic water in New York City. Well, FYI, they're checking the septic water in every city because every child that gets an MMR vaccine pees and poops and it goes into the septic system. So there's always measles, mumps, and rubella in the septic system because they're peeing and pooping and we know they shed. So we need people who actually have a conversation about the truth about this. Nobody even knows that the word shedding exists. It needs to be a conversation that goes out there. Every single vaccine should be forced to be discussed. Why did hepatitis B get passed for newborns at the first day of life? What was the science that proved that it was necessary for the first day of life for children? How many cases of Hep B did you actually have prior to it being passed for being mandatory for Hep B on first day of life? We want you all to stand up and account for your science. After all, you're the ones that are standing for the authority of science. So I think every single vaccine has to be basically put on a court jury. We need the truth exposed that, hey, it looks like the death rate by measles was down long before the actual vaccine came out. So let's address that in a scientific perspective. I don't really want congressmen asking questions. I want congressmen actually having medical professionals that know something about the subject that are not bought and paid for by pharma, asking the questions of the people who are passing the rules. So in my opinion, every single vaccine has to be, judged. And we have to account for every piece of proof that's ever there. We've heard how much they've had to get Freedom of Information Acts given to the CDC and how they're reluctant to give anything. And when they finally do, they don't give the Children's Health Defense, or what is the other program? They don't give the Informed Consent Action Network. They don't give it to them, or they delay it for several months to years. These are the people we're paying taxes that are supposed to be putting protected things out. You don't bat an eye when somebody injects your child with 3 injections, needles in their arms at 2 months old. You don't bat an eye. 3 needles go in your baby. You don't know what's in those needles. It's time to wake up and realize we've all been asleep. It's time to wake up.
Nicole, do you want to touch on that?
I mean, just briefly, and Nurse Michele just kind of mentioned it. So for those that may not know, Robert Kennedy, he is who, Children's Health Defense is an organization that's literally internationally known, that he put together. It was his baby, and he basically put it into place that had evidence-based resources and accurate information that is well studied, so that you could have a conversation and know where to go when it comes to information that we're talking about related to vaccines, related to food, related to things that are happening in your water and your soil. And, again, all of these areas that he has litigated in the past and wanted to bring, forward to shed more light on. And so he is the person that, came up with this and has been very successful. So it's just another notch on the belt for others to understand that he's not just walking in here. He has decades of experience. He always wants to keep the integrity of what is being researched by providing evidence-based and legitimate sources, so that when he's speaking and he's discussing topics, that you have the most up-to-date informed consent and resources to be able to come to a conclusion. So again, he is someone that is very well published and is able to speak very clearly. And on the vaccines itself, we know with time how much has changed, so that even if you don't believe that vaccine injuries exist, something is wrong. There is a common denominator, and where there are other things that can heavily play a role in what could be going on with our health in our children and adults, the fact that you are injecting a child from birth, literally hours old, with a hepatitis B vaccine that we were all taught in school is literally for drug users, IV drug users, and promiscuous individuals, is mind blowing, especially if you've tested the mother who doesn't have any of that. So, people just need to be able to apply common sense and to understand that if you were given true informed consent, if you were said here, we're going to give you a hepatitis B vaccine, but you need to know not only could it cause arm swelling, but the infant could have a low-grade fever, can be really fussy, restless, but also could have febrile seizures, could also have the opportunity to die, that most people would not sign up for this, because we don't meet anyone who is quote unquote anti-vax that turns into a vaxxer. It just is unheard of, because
Yes.
once you'd never go back.
Well, and that's what I wanted to let you guys know. Robert F. Kennedy didn't set out wanting to do this. He talks about how when he was out there doing things for the environment, that he would always have these women, these mothers that were like, I need help. My child was fine, and now they're not. And he kept hearing it over and over and over again, that he was like, okay, what is going on with these mothers? Their children were fine, and then now they're not. And so that's what prompted him to start looking into it and start litigating and start FOIAing all of these things to find out, could it have been the injection, the vaccine, that caused this? And you're right, anti-vaxxers, they don't wake up one day and say, I don't trust the system. There's usually something that happens that is deeply personal. Even for me, it's deeply personal, watching people die and watching this fail time and time again, that I was like, okay, let me start looking into this. And then over the course of, a couple year or two later, I was like, not only do I not recommend the COVID shot, I don't know if I recommend any of them, because there's not enough tests out there. And so when we come back after our break, we're going to continue on this policy discussion. All right, guys, welcome back. Thank you for joining me. I am your host, Nurse Jodi O'Malley, and I am with my co-hosts, Nurse Michele and Nurse Nicole. And we are talking about nurses speaking out on policy reform. And we have an opportunity here, a once in a lifetime opportunity, I believe, where we have a chance to revamp our government. And now you have a lot of us whose eyes are awake. And let me tell you something, I know that there's a lot of people that are like, I don't know about these Trump appointments. Well, let me tell you, this team, this MAHA transition team, is reaching out to people like myself, people like Nurse Kimberly, Nurse Melissa, all these other different nurses that I have been blessed to be in the battle with, and warriors that have put in applications, and we are getting called back. So that tells me something. That tells me something right there. It's just like Carrie Lake, asking me to come and speak at her event with news cameras in my face, not even knowing what I was going to talk about, right? Like, this is how much we want to be done with the censorship. And we want to go back to ethical behavior, not only in media, but in our government, in policy and decision making, and bring integrity back to Washington. So we talked a little bit about vaccine policy right before the break, and now I want to move on to accountability and liability in healthcare. I have a few bullet points. Remove the liability protection given to Big Pharma. No financial rewards for physicians or institutions for administering certain drugs or treatments. particularly related to COVID-19, testing available to foreigners to determine whether a death is vaccine related, and revamp the recall system for unsafe products, including vaccines. These are some of the bullet points that I received from you, the listeners, when I asked what policies you would like to see changed. And so these, let's start with Nurse Nicole on this one.
So first and foremost, I think it's a really great topic because we don't have accountability where it needs to be in healthcare. We all know that was highlighted over and over again during the pandemic, and it went as far as to be implemented into law that there were states, all states that basically protected healthcare workers and those attached, so that if you were to have any poor outcomes, that you would not be held liable, or you could not be used to prosecute for something because of the nature of the pandemic. And so a lot of things in healthcare lack accountability. We want to make sure that our patients know that there is integrity. They can come and count on healthcare workers, and that it is going to be with, smart, educated individuals who are not only empathetic, but also have the integrity and have accountability to give them the best care. And also, if something was to happen, that they would be able to rectify that, and the patients would have the entire story at their fingertips. I have someone that just reached out to me. She is an LVAD patient. She went for a procedure, and I guess after the procedure, she was having some complications, not feeling very well, nauseous, stuff like that. Well, she had a bunch of anesthesia. They gave her some medication, compazine and some other stuff. And immediately she says that she was told that she was a code blue. She went unresponsive, all the things. And so she is obviously very lucky to be still with us, but had a lot of concerns on what exactly happened, what was the process. And she feels like she's kind of getting the runaround and that her records are not necessarily giving the full picture. And so again, it's the perception, it's understanding the process, and that if something does happen, even if it wasn't, under malpractice or, negligence, intentional and negligence, that we would be able to come forward and healthcare would be seen in the light like we used to be, where we were trusted and that you could come to us and that you would be safe. Now there's a lot of individuals with stories like hers that really just don't feel confident in the system, and a lot of times struggle with seeking care. And then that just creates more issues because more people wait and they get sicker and they have more chronic illnesses. And then by the time they do come to us, they're in such poor shape that we may or not, may not be able to do a whole lot for them. And so it kind of adds this negative, persona, if you will, about how healthcare just doesn't do anything, can't help you, can't be trusted. So that accountability and being able to know that we now have individuals in place that are not going to shield those who are negligent, purposely negligent, and that if something was to happen, could be rectified. And again, that goes across the board for our vaccine injured. I work heavily with the vaccine injured. They are tired, angry. We have bereaved. We have individuals that have lost everything because of a product that was deemed safe and effective, that was anything but for a fair majority of people and counting, and they feel like they've been left behind. So not only did the government push this, coerce people, bully, take everything away from them, they didn't have accountability the second things started going wrong after they pigeonholed these individuals to make these decisions. So I just think it's a huge topic that needs to be focused on in the next administration, because without it, you don't have that trust anymore. You don't have individuals willing to work alongside us and look at us as nurses with integrity to go, you are a trusted profession. I can not only trust that you're going to take good care of me, but you're going to be held accountable, as we all should. So that's really my stance on that one.
Michele?
You brought up something about trust, how important trust is. I learned something this year just from counseling on relationship counseling, that trust actually isn't something that you just get. It is a fruit of truth. So in the absence of what we believe the American people have not been given, we have not been given truth. So there's no reason whatsoever to trust the present system, because the system has proven untruthful. So if you're not truthful about, if you tell people that vaccines don't cause autism, and then we discover that you didn't do any studies to support that claim, well, you are not truthful with us. So therefore, we don't have trust of you. Mm-hmm. And Jodi brought up the conflict of interest issues. It really doesn't even take a science person to figure out that nobody should be in a position of power making decisions that the entire American children population and adult population have to somehow submit to these vaccines. Let's just say vaccines for right now. For the good of all the people in America, if you have any money, patent, stake, any connection whatsoever to anything with that vaccine, if you are connected in any way, you should never be able to get a job by the previous. And apparently a lot of them do. They're hired by some of these pharmaceutical companies after they pass some of these vaccines. So we should have zero conflict of interest, but we need people like probably Dr. McCullough, who are very well versed in studies and discerning what is corrupt in a study, what makes a study bad or good, because we all know as nurses, no matter what level of degree you have as a nurse, you did not learn how to properly read a study yourself. Mm-hmm. Dr. Brown says that as soon as these doctors get out of med school and they're put in his care to be a part of, go through their time with him, they're forced for like 30 days to do nothing but learn how to actually read a study, because he knows they're incompetent for reading a medical study. So if even the people graduating with their wonderful medical degrees and their high-level nursing degrees don't know how to properly read a study, people, you don't know how to either, okay? So we need people who are really skilled, like that are trustworthy, have proven to be truthful. Let's just use Dr. McCullough for an example right now. And let him come in and say, these are the kind of studies we're not going to put up with anymore, because he knows what the terminology is, the verbiage, the corruption. Perhaps, we need truthful, honest people that can be brought in to actually analyze what is the real problem with the system, because we all have to admit some of it is over our head. And we're not going to let just people who say you're not up here where I am with my credentials say to us that we don't have enough credentials to judge them. We have enough common sense to be able to judge that your conflict of interest is making a problem for the American people.
Yeah, I mean, you saw during the COVID pandemic in Washington, D.C., when Fauci was going through the neighborhoods with the Governor Brewer, I believe, and they stopped at this one guy's door and they said, "Sir, did you get your shot? Did you get your vaccine?" And he's like, "No, I don't trust it. All you people push is fear, 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 fear. That's all you're pushing is fear. Why would I try this?" And that's the whole point, right? There, a lot of people do know that something was up, but they did trust the government to have their best interest in mind. Saying that, even pediatricians, people think, yes, they don't have any conflict of interest, but they do. There were so many people. See, we didn't really hear that much about pediatricians firing, their patients from their practice prior to COVID, but they got kickbacks for the vaccines. Okay. Not just pediatricians, but primary care doctors. They got kickbacks for the vaccines, just like pediatricians have for centuries. Many of us didn't know that. I didn't know that. Because
there's a policy right there. There's a policy right there.
There's a policy right there. Exactly. You can't say that you're going to get kickbacks and even more than that based on the percentage. So now you're trying to get your practice to be 92% or better vaccinated so that you get the biggest bonus payout. I mean, it's just maddening to me that exists.
And that just your accountability and your trust. I mean, how are we going to trust these individuals have your best interest when you know in the background that there is money involved on the amount of vaccines? Because primary care, there's not a lot of money in that. And that's why a lot of people don't do it. They don't like it. It's just, you're seeing too many patients, all the things. So that's why you see now selling things, products, trying to put things in their office, offer alternative type services to generate more money, because there isn't. For a pediatrician, their money is in vaccinations. And so for them to lack integrity and ethically be not liable, if you will. I know it's we're in a free country, but to turn someone away because they're not willing vaccinated, it just goes against, again, there's no accountability for that and the ethical behind it. Where is that?
I have an amazing pediatrician that is as natural as they come. But when I first called her office, the secretary had been instructed to say that we only accept patients who comply 100% with the vaccine program. And you would never think the pediatrician, and I said, listen, I'm not even having a conversation with you. You don't even know what I'm talking about. I need to talk to the doctor. So when I got into the doctor, I found out she's this amazing human being who's totally pro natural options. But she, I'd have to do a deep dive with her to find out why that communist kind of reaction happens from the secretary before you even get in. So somebody like me is not even going to usually get into a program like them. So if you're told that and you're just some new young mom, you're 20 years old, you just had your first baby, maybe, you're young, you just don't know these things. And when you have a pediatrician's office doing that, it does have its effect. You feel like you're the ignorant one. You're not smart about everything, but they have this intimidation factor. That's got to stop. This incentivization has got to stop because it is harming the public. And all of you need to think in the audience, what is it that's really affecting you as a person? When you go to see your doctor, what is the problem at the front line when you go into your office? I have a nurse friend who just has major medical going on. That person can't even figure out why the insurance is making them go through hoops to do certain tests before they can even get a particular treatment. We know about the Lexi Lorenz case. It was a policy that she couldn't even get her treatment unless she had her vaccines up to date. These are the kind of policies that are hurting people right at the moment of their medical problems when they actually just need access to help.
Right. Well, number 4 is alternative medicine and holistic health. Insurance coverage for holistic treatments, chiropractors, and naturopaths, and prioritizing and addressing the root cause of health issues instead of just treating symptoms. And I think in there, doctors are pushed to see patients, 15 minutes, that's max. The more patients you see, the better your paycheck is going to be, right? And it should be based on outcome. How are you helping your patients, right? Are your patients getting better? Or do you just care about how many patients you can get through the door, write a script for omeprazole. Oh, you have heartburn? Here's omeprazole. Here you go. Oh, you got your labs drawn? Your cholesterol is high? Oh, here's a statin. Here you go. Everybody's on them. Everybody's on omeprazole. Everybody's on a statin. Everybody's on a high blood pressure instead of addressing root cause approach. So yes, there has to be some type of program in place or incentive in place, protocols in place that a person could go through these, different holistic treatments and, like maybe cold plunges, right? Like there's a lot of benefits in that. Saunas, chiropractors, those types of things before getting, getting put on a medication, I guess.
We have to have zero tolerance. We need to have zero tolerance of the rejection of the functional medicine community. We cannot allow them to continue to reject the functional medicine community as if they're alternative or as if they're fringe. They predate the present medical system, thanks to the Rockefellers, the way we have it right now. But that is why we are where we are. We've got to let these people who know that the simple remedies actually do help. We need to give them voice, and they need to be able to get paid well for what they do, and us not get gouged for it.
I remember in nursing school, we had the opportunity for alternative treatments. It was a small section. It was discussed. And I just attended a conference that had some of it. So for the listeners, some of you may think some of these are a little silly, but if you think about it, in the world that we're in, being bogged down with just stress and anxiety and depression and social media and just the idea that you have to be perfect, what about things as simple as music therapy, art therapy, dance, social things, just things that push you in a different alternate opportunity to heal. It's different for everyone, and acupuncture, and like they're saying, cold plunges and saunas. There's no harm in trying different things that could activate or deactivate, whatever you want to call it, that gives you the opportunity to still be treated like a human being, but not necessarily be pumped full of drugs. There's always been alternative options. They just don't tell you, they don't promote it, because why, so like everyone's saying on this right now, is there are options out there, and you're not being told, you're not even being given the opportunity, but they do exist. And there's wonderful human beings out there who are well studied in these areas, that could guide and help people in a different way that doesn't involve this Western approach where you have to take a pill for everything. Because yes, it is incentivized for you to do so, because you will still remain a lifelong patient to the healthcare system. That's how they keep you, not going to music therapy or, indulging in colors and music and sounds, things that sound maybe a little crazy right now, but really do genuinely help people and heal. Those are therapies.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we want also to make trials affordable so that these doctors that are out there using, let's say, music therapy, if they got the results with music therapy, we want it documented. We don't want them gaslit because they didn't have $1 billion, contract with a grant from somebody at FDA who only gives it to the people who are connected and have their money connections to pharma. We want real studies going on out there that actually prove these doctors that are doing successful things are actually working so that people can have access.
Yes, 100%. That's a big one. That's huge. It costs so much money to do studies and clinical trials. And that's where you also get a lot of these good products that go to the MLM companies, right? Because they don't have the means to put that kind of information out to get FDA approved, but they know that it works. So then they get people to, get on board and be affiliates and tell people about it. Right. So here's another one: health insurance reform. Health insurance should be separate from healthcare providers, offer options for those who choose not to use gene therapies, and hold insurance companies accountable for their practices. Right, withholding. I mean, we just did a show on, the CEO getting shot. Yeah, I think there's a lot. What do you guys have to say about health insurance reform?
Well, I'll just say this because I am in a new situation of life where I now am probably about 20 days away from having zero health care for the first time in my life. And I'm a high-risk person. So a high-risk person that doesn't have a job that's going to give them health care, or isn't in a marriage where the health care is provided through a spouse. So I'm one of who knows how many millions of people out there. I think, Jodi, you're probably in that same situation as well. And we need options for healthcare. And we know that people do walk in and get free healthcare all the time who have not even citizenship in our country. So we do have a problem, Houston. And if anybody has some great solutions out there for us, we would sure love to know it. But we definitely need reform in just affordable health care, so we don't need insurance to get health care.
That's right. Like, it should just be major medical, like, insurance for, oh, you need to go to it's an emergency and they're not going to take your home away. Major medical. Other than that, I think a lot of our money should be saved. I mean, for me, for example, if I am single with child, okay, $800 is the minimum that they want me to pay a month out of pocket. Now, I don't spend $800. Both of us don't, or neither of us have any medical issues. I just got my labs drawn for $200. I paid out of pocket $400 for my naturopath. I went and got a medication I needed to get on prednisone. I paid $2 cash pay. It's a lot cheaper for me to piece together it myself and pay what I need to pay than pay $800. Even when I was working for the government, I was paying $500 a month out of pocket. That's $6,000 a year. I didn't even need to go to the doctor, right? So it's a waste, I think, for a lot of people. Here's another one: financial transparency and corruption. No financial incentives for NIH, NIAID employees or scientists from pharmaceutical companies or patents. Government funded health information should not be influenced by corporate interest. Yes, you touched on that, Michele.
It seems like yeah, it's a no-brainer. I mean, I don't even think you have to be really involved in science to know that that makes no sense that that's what's been happening.
Yeah, total conflict of interest. All right, lastly, let's see. Environmental and lifestyle factors, improve food quality, eliminate GMOs, antibiotics, hormones, and pesticides, purify drinking water and reduce toxins, support natural health practices like thermography, detoxing, and parasite cleansing. I think, yes, we all know. I mean, now it's public knowledge out there that they are spraying our skies. They call it cloud seeding or geoengineering. What did we have? I think it was Tennessee that banned it. Maybe even Florida. Was it, Nicole? Did you guys ban cloud seeding?
Florida is on the map to start talking about that. We have somebody that's introducing a bill on that. But what our biggest thing right now is removing fluoride across the state, starting at a city or county level. So that is something that it's been spoken about, and it kind of applies to this topic that you're talking about, because we have our general, state surgeon general, Dr. Joseph Ladapo, who has very well clearly stated that we now know it's a neurotoxin. Essentially, this is a medical treatment being applied into our water systems that is being done so not by medical professionals, that could put them in the potential for a toxic tort. And so we are actually presenting this week, Justin Harvey and I and a few other physicians in the area in our local county commissioner meetings this week to ban fluoride, and to do it at that county level to try to help at least start giving individuals clean water, options to clean water. And then if you want to add it with your toothpaste and your mouthwash, and when you go to the dentist, that's on you. But it would not only save the county money, but also help, what we think. And now it could harm children's IQ and all kinds of things that are health issues that have now been studied. So yeah, it's just a no-brainer.
All right, guys. Well, that, we did get through, I believe, all of the talking points. I want to thank you for your feedback, and thank you for, starting to get involved and raising your voices and not being fearful. It's so important, especially if you're a nurse listening to this. Like I said, guys, our ethical duty is to continue to educate and also to help the community, not just the people in front of us. And so I hope that this show empowers you to be more vocal, more informed, and proactive in advocating for these changes. And until next time, friends, be safe, be well, and God bless. Thank you, ladies.